the predator. They all feared Purred like a kitten. Only in the human's lap the Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the massive doors groaned open. Every species representative, from the towering crystalline Zephyrians to the tentacled mollusk confederacy, turned their various optical organs toward the entrance. What they saw defied every strategic assessment, every xenobiological report, and every tactical briefing they had received. Admiral Sarah Chen walked calmly into the chamber, her standard-issue Earthfleet uniform crisp and unremarkable, but coiled around her shoulders like a living scarf was something that made the assembled delegates' blood run cold in their veins, or whatever equivalent fluid kept them alive. It was a void stalker. The creature's obsidian scales gleamed under the chamber's artificial lighting, each one capable of deflecting plasma bolts. Its 4 golden eyes, each the size of a human fist, lazily scanned the room while its serpentine body, easily 12 feet long, draped itself across the human's shoulders with obvious contentment. Most terrifying of all was the sound emanating from deep within its chest, a rumbling purr that seemed to vibrate through the very air. Ambassador Kethrall of the Hegemony was the first to break the stunned silence. His translator crackled with static as his panic affected the device's calibration. "Impossible," he whispered, his 6 arms trembling. "The humans, they've weaponized a void stalker." "Weaponized?" Admiral Chen raised an eyebrow, reaching up to scratch behind one of the creature's auditory membranes. The purring intensified, and the stalker's tail, tipped with a stinger capable of punching through battleship armor, swished contentedly. "I think you misunderstand the situation, Ambassador. The creature in question was known across 17 star systems as the apex predator of the void. Void stalkers were born in the crushing darkness between stars, evolved to hunt in zero atmosphere, and possessed reflexes that made them nearly impossible to track with conventional sensors. A single adult could tear through a heavy cruiser's hull in minutes. Entire fleets had been lost to packs of them in the Outer Rim Wars. They had never, in recorded galactic history, been anything other than utterly hostile to all sentient life." "Admiral," Chen approached her designated seat at the council table. With each step, 200 of the galaxy's most powerful beings unconsciously leaned away from her. The Void Stalker, meanwhile, had begun what could only be described as nuzzling against the side of her head. 3 months ago, Chen began, settling into her chair as the creature adjusted its position to remain comfortable, our survey ship Discovery encountered a damaged stalker in the Kepler 442 system. It was young, barely past juvenile stage, and badly injured from what appeared to be a territorial dispute with an adult. The stalker's head turned toward the mollusk representative, who immediately retracted into his shell with an audible pop. But instead of the expected aggressive display, the creature simply observed with what could only be described as curiosity before returning its attention to the human. "Our xenobiologist, Dr. Martinez, made an interesting observation," Chen continued, absently stroking the creature's neck. "The injury patterns and behavioral indicators suggested the stalker wasn't attacking our ship. It was seeking shelter. So instead of following standard protocols—" "You violated 17 different species protection accords," interrupted Commander Vexhai of the Rigel Defense Consortium, his mandibles clicking rapidly, a sign of severe agitation among his kind. "We provided medical assistance," Chen finished calmly. "Dr. Martinez spent 2 weeks treating its injuries while our ship's cook, a former animal trainer from Earth named Bobby Kim, started offering it food. The purring grew louder, and the stalker's golden eyes half closed in what any human would recognize as contentment. The breakthrough came," Chen continued, "when Bobby started playing classical music during feeding times, Earth classical, Bach specifically. Turned out our friend here has quite sophisticated auditory processing capabilities." As if on cue, Chen tapped a control on her wrist device. The chamber filled with the gentle strains of Bach's Air on the O.G. string. The effect on the Void Stalker was immediate. Its purring harmonized with the music, creating an otherworldly but strangely beautiful sound. The assembled delegates watched in amazement as the galaxy's most feared predator essentially melted into a state of blissful relaxation. "What we discovered," Chen said over the music, is that void stalkers aren't actually solitary predators. They're pack hunters with complex social structures, high intelligence, and, most importantly, they form lifelong bonds with individuals they consider family. She gestured to her companion, who had now arranged itself in what could only be described as a cuddle position. Meet Harmony. She chose her own name, by the way. Stalkers are quite capable of learning human language, though they prefer telepathic communication. The music faded, but the purring continued. Harmony's massive head turned to survey the room once more, and several delegates swore they saw something like amusement in those golden eyes. The question before this council, Admiral Chen said, her voice taking on a more formal tone, is whether the galactic community is prepared to reconsider its assumptions about species we've labeled as hostile. Earth's xenobiological teams have identified at least 37 so-called monster species that show indicators of potential domestication or partnership. Ambassador Kethril found his voice. You're suggesting peaceful coexistence with void stalkers? I'm suggesting, Chen replied, that perhaps the problem was never the stalkers themselves, but our approach to first contact. Humans have a saying, every animal is just a pet you haven't met yet. Harmony's purring intensified, and she gently nuzzled Chen's cheek with obvious affection. Though I prefer to think of Harmony as family, the Galactic Council had gathered expecting to hear humanity's defense against charges of violating deep space regulations. Instead, they found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew about the universe's apex predators. And at the center of it all sat a human woman, calmly conducting diplomacy, while the galaxy's most feared creature purred in her lap like an oversized, extremely dangerous house cat. The vote to establish the Interspecies Domestication Research Initiative passed 847 to 23. Harmony approved.